Hello and welcome to another edition of All Wednesday. Apologise, I'm in a coffee shop. It may be a little bit louder than it should be. Where I was meant to record has not played out as I'd hoped. So I've got Alex Miller here to chat about everything Wednesday while I'm sat having a coffee. Alex, it's been another busy week, should we say? Not a lot has happened, but a lot has been said, I suppose.
Yeah, feels like it's a constantly moving train, Sheffield Wednesday, and like you say, nothing absolutely nailed down, confirmed. Obviously, the points deduction came in that we all knew was coming. A sense of relief that is would appear to be the end of the matter, and further confirms what we all already knew. That Sheffield Wednesday will be operating in League One next season. So. Beyond that, some other bits and bobs about the short and medium term in terms of the squad that Wednesday may be able to put together, but so many variables in the way. It's impossible really to see the wood for the trees right now, but we've got an indication.
Yeah, and that was, going back to the points deduction stuff, I think one of the things that so many Wednesdayites have been concerned about now is that this is going to drag into the new season with the new owner, whoever that may be. How important is it for Sheffield Wednesday that they've not only been given this points deduction now, but effectively been told by the league that in terms of points deductions, that this is it now?
Yeah, very, very positive indeed. I mean, the one heading into next season will be obviously dependent on the takeover and the success of satisfying the 25p in the pound rule. Very quick explainer for that for listeners or viewers that might not be aware. The EFL say that secured football creditors have to be paid 25p in the pound of what they're owed by a club exiting administration. If new owners cannot satisfy that and make sure that the relevant debts are settled by a certain date, then that club will go into the following season with a 15-point deduction. Administrators have sort of said on record that they have buyers who will, satisfy that number, believed to be around 30 million quid. Around half of that goes to a certain man in Bangkok, which people are a little bit disappointed about. But as long as that situation plays out as is hoped, and a deal does get done and everything goes to plan, then Sheffield Wednesday will be starting the season on 0 points, albeit in the third tier.
Yeah, and obviously it wasn't just that as well. There was talk of the transfer fee restriction. We always knew that there was going to be appealed. It's the logical thing to do. But the wording of the statement was interesting, wasn't it? It was that it sort of suggested that they had a chance. And I remember when we've spoken to different people throughout this entire process, they've always said that there's not zero chance, but just don't be expecting it to be reduced. But if Wednesday can get through, obviously the summer has been and gone, January will come along and Wednesday aren't going to be able to do anything then. But again, it would be probably quite futile anyway, given the situation they find themselves in. But for a new owner to be able to come in on 0 points with the ability to spend a bit of money if they want to, it's a big deal for the football club going into next season. But it's also a big deal for whoever wants to buy the club and I suppose the value that is placed on it.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, as a bit of a side note on that, is that the stance appears to have changed to an extent. The noises that we were hearing were that the EFL were going to stand firm on the fee restriction, and as I say, there appears to be an indication that that's softening again until it's ratified and done, and we hear that things are signed and sealed on that.
How many things do you think we've caveated over the last 6 months?
Well, look, we have to, and there's
crazy.
It's like we said, a constantly moving train, and there's so many stakeholders involved in this sort of thing. But I think there was always a desire of some sort on. Sort of got the feeling that the EFL were clearly they have to punish Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday have broken the rules. That is the fact of the matter. But I think there is also a pragmatic sense that under new ownership, that any rulings would not necessarily want to get in the way of Wednesday being taken over and moving to better health. And perhaps this is a part of it. So yeah, the understanding at the moment is that it's likely that Wednesday will be remain sort of operating under the terms of freeze and loans for the forthcoming January transfer window. But it's hoped that the fee restriction terms will be lifted heading into the summer.
And from a now perspective, we touched on it a little bit before. Yes, it would be helpful for Henrik to have new players come in for the sake of the guys that are already there. But you also, we don't know what the new owner would be looking to do anyway. But you also don't want to be throwing money at things in a January when there is so little left to play for from Wednesday's perspective, right?
I think so. I think there's a desire for Wednesday to remain competitive, and the fact is that in terms of player welfare and this sort of thing, it's really important that a couple of players are able to be brought on. And I think they will do, and I think that there are deals to be done that are not necessarily hugely expensive. And so yeah, I think it's inevitable if Wednesday are able to do, and again, there's a lot of variables that need to be moved out the way in order for that to happen. But there is a confidence they will be able to do so. I would expect a little bit of business in January.
You speak there of new signings. We have had a couple through the door, obviously. With Liam Cooper, we've seen a bit more of him than we have of Nathan Redmond. I thought in his first full debut, he looked really good. Nathan Redmond looked bright when he came on. Do you think the two players that will add to the quality that Wednesday have?
Yeah, in terms of quality, no doubt. You don't play that number of games between them in the Premier League, and both international caps, and they're both names familiar to everyone. You don't build a career like that without a good, healthy pedigree and quality. So yeah, certainly from a football perspective, I think what's probably almost bigger is the nous and the experience that they bring. That is a young and threadbare squad. Threadbare. I would love a quid for every time one of us put that in an article.
I keep trying to think of different words for it, but there isn't any. Like there aren't any that serve the purpose so well.
The number of times I've Googled threadbare synonym and expecting it to just throw up, different results each time.
It's going to come to the point where you search threadbare and it just comes up with a picture of Henrik Pedersen.
But yeah, it's that they bring. That Liam Cooper's been a captain of a very, very successful Leeds United side, and was a big part of a Scotland camp for a long time. And I was a little bit blown away by Nathan Redmond's initial interview with the club. We've got press tomorrow. I don't know whether we'll get to speak to either him or Liam. Hopefully so. But he just came across a really grounded individual, and I think with Redmond particularly, he was in the Birmingham City side at 16, and so knows all about these young lads who maybe may need to be called upon. And Henrik's spoken pretty glowingly about his approach on the training ground and going around and speaking to as many people as possible and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, both positive additions. I think the test will be in keeping them fit. I think I'm just putting together a piece this afternoon about Nathan Redmond's played I think 20 minutes since Boxing Day 23. To expect him to go in and play lots and lots of minutes and play the role that a player of that quality you'd hope would be able to, it's going to have to be a staging up process. And given the nature of his contract running out in the new year, we'll see how they manage to do that. And Liam Cooper obviously wasn't able to start on Saturday because he'd been thrown in, had to be thrown in, for the derby and the game at Millwall, and we gather he pulled up really really difficultly in training. The phrase was used to me. Was barely able to walk Thursday and Friday. So yeah, the fact that he was able to play 10 minutes or 15 minutes at the weekend, fair play to him. But I suppose after every day it'll get slightly easier.
And you mentioned that the minutes and the squad rotation or lack thereof, I suppose. I thought you did a really good piece on it the other day in terms of explaining the reality of Sheffield Wednesday's situation at the moment, because it is, we joke about the use of threadbare and stuff, but Wednesday are dealing with a lot at the moment, aren't they? And it's not just the lack of players; it's the lack of ability to change anything. And these kids have got to be managed a certain way. Liam Cooper and Nathan Redmond have got to be managed a certain way, and he's in a very difficult situation, isn't he, Henrik Pedersen?
Yeah, yeah. You look at the squad on Saturday, and you'd probably say 14 of those players were senior men. That includes someone like Bayo, who I don't know, I'd have to have a look, but has he played 20 games at senior level? Harry Amas, obviously great pedigree from Man United, but very much in the same boat, and Sean Facera, and then the lads on the bench are the two fellas that we've just spoken about who've barely kicked a ball in the last couple of years, and Ike Ogbo, his enormous form struggle aside, or certainly goal scoring struggle, had a kid in midweek and has barely slept, and his life's been turned around. And it's, you've got to feel a bit for Henrik who's turning around, and there's those lads and the Brat Pack who've again had luck, played 42 minutes of Championship football between them, 6 of them, and 38 of those belong to Reece Johnson. So when Reece Johnson is your senior option on the bet, it is what it is, and there has to be an appreciation that with the injuries that have come in, the quality of the squad in terms of what they've achieved in football. Sean Facera is a very talented footballer, and I'm sure he can go on and achieve great things. And he's been magnificent in how he stepped up to a role that frankly perhaps he's not quite ready for this season. But last year he was struggling to get into a Carlisle side that was relegated from League Two. And again, I was very wary when writing that piece about coming across disparaging or doing individuals down. That's not the case. As I say, Sean Bailey, these lads coming in and years ahead of schedule, contributing to a Championship side that has competed in just about every game. One or two, particularly one big caveat, or not caveat, but exception to that. That I think will leave a bruise on Sheffield Wednesday for a long time. But it's magnificent how they've done that, and I think, personally speaking, it is just an opinion. I think Henrik Pedersen and the coaching staff and the individuals involved deserve greater praise for how things have remained competitive.
And there's a lot to be said for the mental work that they've done as well, right? It's not just the fact that they've managed to keep them competitive with the way they've been playing. I mean, obviously the game the other day was probably as good as Wednesday have played all season, and to still get that sucker punch because you haven't quite got that little bit that you need. Like, we've spoken to him in press conferences about it, haven't we? Like, a big problem is like making sure this season doesn't fizzle out, and he's done an incredible job so far of making sure that Wednesday not just stay competitive in terms of the way they're playing in games, but they're, again, United game aside, that they've managed to hold their heads high and really go into games thinking they can get something out of them.
Yeah, I think so, and you can't imagine how difficult that is. You go just taking yourself back to the well, week on week on week. We gather that the training program is being handled very, very difficultly. It's not, you've not got a situation where you've got 25 senior players, or 20 senior players and 5 youngsters, as we've seen, last season and what have you. And, you take 2 or 3 of those out because they're injured or they're fatigued or the, whatever it might be, and training can operate as normal. that's just not the case. And with so many games and people having been asked to play so much, very, very small training groups. You won't take a genius to work out. You take some of the high quality players out who need a rest and need time out. The quality of training dips. It's going to, especially in a smaller pool of players. So the way that they are remaining sort of robust in and bouncing back. The derby was obviously, it was beyond disappointing. The way that Wednesday didn't go out and show the scrap and battle that we've seen from them for the rest of the season. But the responses at Millwall and against Preston were very impressive indeed. And again, it's another example of this side sort of showing their mettle and fighting for the badge, and that's such a cliche, and it sounds like a bit of nonsense. And any other season, I might roll my eyes at that sort of comment, but there is a real sense that that's the case.
Yeah, I mean this group of players, and I think we'll always have to keep mentioning the United game because it was United. I think if they'd rolled over in a game against anybody else, I think it would have been forgiven. But because of who it was against, it is something that we're going to have to keep sort of begrudgingly bringing up. But they have shown so much scrap for this badge. The fact that they're still here, a lot of them, and they had the chance to walk away, I think says more about them than a bad day at the office against Sheffield United does. But moving away from the football, we obviously touched on what has happened with regards to the ownership and potential sale and the point deductions. But looking forward, where are we at? Obviously, we're approaching that 5th of December deadline that was originally, well, not a deadline, but the day that they were hoping to have a preferred bidder. That's not going to be the case anymore, is it?
Nope. But the 5th of December sort of marked out as a busy day. Busy day in the calendar. And really helpfully, it's going to just push on further towards Christmas. And the due date of my second child, which is just marvellous. The way things have...
Nothing like Sheffield Wednesday getting in the way of things, is it?
So, it's not going to be December the 5th. I gather there is, a sort of hope that certainly in the next couple of weeks, possibly towards the end of next week, that the process will have moved on to a preferred bidder status. There's no guarantee that at that point the identities of the successful party will be revealed, and then from there is a ratification period on the EFL's part, which will be determined essentially by who the party is. There's a owner and directors process and test that they'll have to go to. If it's squeaky clean, if it's people that are known to the EFL already, all that sort of stuff, that process is speeded up quite considerably. If it's brand new set of eyes, then it might take a little bit longer. But I think, and this is a feeling, based around some conversations, but it's not, it's not something that I've been told outright. But I would feel that perhaps we are looking into the new year now in terms of someone having having their bum on the chairman's chair. But we will see. Again, going back to what we said about the EFL appreciating the need to bring Wednesday to better health. That there's always been an understanding that process will be expedited as much as possible. And I don't pick up a grand panic in terms of the December the 5th target not being hit. That there are bits and pieces around that would explain that. Put it in a piece. It sounds ridiculous, but everyone takes 3 days off for Thanksgiving if you're from a certain part of the world, and on the understanding that people around it are from that part of the world, that's a factor, and down the line it may well be the case that Christmas and New Year, knocks it onto the other side of the turn of the year. So we're just in a bit of a a lull period where the process is sort of going back and forth, and this was always forecast that there would be a bit of a quiet period where everyone's doing the due diligence and getting to a place where those final offers are fired in, and I know sort of in that couple of weeks that'll be quite a busy one for everyone.
Yeah, I have no doubt that whenever your second child is on the way, that day in particular will be a very busy day, because that's how this works.
Yeah. I mean, you and me both. It's we've had some rollickings from our wives for answering phone calls at silly times and ducking out of family events, and
Yeah, I'm not sure you can get away with it in labour though.
no, well, it's how much I want that story, Joe. But it's yeah.
Sorry. Just bear with me. It's Chris Wigfield. I just got to pop off.
I wouldn't expect that. But yeah, we'll see. I think I'll have to, frustratingly, after covering all this, with yourself and a couple of others for the last year, as it gets to its grand crescendo, I'm going to have to dip out for a few weeks. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Just before we go, we have got another game coming up this weekend. Blackburn it feels like they've been involved in some important moments at Sheffield Wednesday recently. Obviously the promotions, the survival season not long back. What are you expecting from them this weekend? They've had a bit of a strange season, haven't they?
I've got to admit, Joe, when you just said there's a game coming up, I was filled with panic because I couldn't remember who it was. And unfortunately, we're in this weird position where two footballers are sat on a podcast, or whatever you call it these days, talking about a football club, and that's the first time we've really spoken about football. And it feels so inconsequential. And the stories are not there. It's, there are bigger things at play for Sheffield Wednesday Football Club than what happens on Saturday. That being said, I'm really, really looking forward to it. Yeah, Blackburn's fond memories. It was I think the seminal result amongst many of the Great Escape, and very fond memories of that. And there's always a decent away following and what have you. So, as we've said, any win for Sheffield Wednesday this season is instantly iconic, and any draw feels like a win in a normal season. So, good luck to it, lads.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thanks very much for joining us. We'll hopefully be talking about a Wednesday win, but we've been hoping for that for quite some time now. Alex, thank you very much for joining me as always, and we'll keep it locked on the Start at UK for everything Sheffield Wednesday as things come to a head over the coming weeks. Cheers.